Good.
Hello out there today. Welcome to our podcast of The Brand and the Source. This is The Brand, Eric Johnson.
And this is The Source, Aaron Thigpen. Guys, today's topic, let's name it FAQ, Frequently Asked Questions. Me and EJ, we're going to talk about our top 3, maybe if we have time, 5 frequently asked questions about our specific areas of expertise. For me, it'll be speed training, and for EJ, it'll be hitting. So we're just going to kind of go over some of the most, those most commonly asked questions about what we do, our discipline, and, what parents need, what parents want to know, or what athletes want to know. So without further ado, let's hit it.
All right, Aaron, first question I hear, pretty constantly on a weekly basis is this. My kid does not hit in the games. Great in practice, great in the cages, great with the hitting coach, but no results in the game. So, Aaron, this is a question that it's not ongoing with me. I think 52 weeks out of the year, my man. And I tell parents, I go, the first thing is that, practice in the game has a different mental, level in terms of just the anxiety, the energy, kids throwing harder, off speed, all kinds of different elements in it. And I tell parents a lot who ask me this question is that, do players try to do the same thing they do in practice that they do in the game? Is their routine the same? A lot of times when I'm hitting, Aaron, I do what I call a mock game situation where, whether I'm throwing, well, I can't throw now, but when I'm putting the ball in the machine and the ball is fed, if they take it, okay, step out of the batter's box like you are in the game and go through your routine. What is your routine? And when you get into a routine, there's this comfort level of relaxation and you're on automatic pilot and you're not trying so hard. You're not thinking about your mechanics. You're just allowing it to happen, not making it happen, but allowing the process that you've been working on to just foster and grow, and you're building confidence. You're not worried so much about this guy throws hard. What's wrong with my back foot? Is my elbow here? Am I launching the bat under the plane? Am I on top of the ball? Am I overstriding? That is too much in the batter's box. I think there needs to be a degree of a routine for a player. And I think that's the first thing I would mention. Get a routine. What are your thoughts about that real quick, Aaron? I think
you're right. We got, what's the term? Paralysis by analysis.
Right.
Because, we're in the information age and there's so much information, data for athletes to consume. It can kind of freeze them, Right. Athletes start to get this, they're taught a checklist, but then they kind of try and go through that checklist while they're trying to compete. And, that kind of freezes them up. And I think athletes need to understand there's a training mode and a competitive mode. And you've got to kind of let some of that stuff go and just, like you said, let the body take over.
Right. And
if you've been doing it right in practice and you've got that mind-body connection, then it will happen. It may not always happen exactly the way you want it, but you'll start to get closer and closer to it. And, again, we talk about flow and all those other things. And I think that's what a routine helps you do. Right. Because by doing that, establishing that physical routine or even that mental routine, it's sending the signals to the body. And so if you're doing that during practice every day and it responds, well, it's going to respond when you're in competition.
Right.
So that's your switch. Your routine is your switch.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you anymore. I always use this terminology here. I call it DCBA. Decision, clear, breathe, and attack. that allows you to kind of just function in, you know, that flow, that rhythm, and allows you to free up, because I think players don't free up when they're hitting in the game. They can't. And I think that routine allows them to. And when I say D, I'm talking that decision. You're stepping out of the batter's box, making your adjustment. Then the C part of that is getting in the batter's box, breathing a little bit, clearing your thoughts. And then the B, breathe, and then C ball, hit ball, attack. You know, if you could just get into a 7-second, 8-second routine of doing that, and on every pitch, it frees you up to perform. And I think that's the key. When I hear that question, my kid doesn't hit in the game, he has some practice hitting coaches. I think that DCBA, decision, clear, breathe, and attack, the routine allows you to do that. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. What you got for me? What question you got for the on the training aspect, brother?
Let's see. I think, you know, if I have to rank it, probably the number one question, especially when an athlete or a parent just phones me and they're inquiring about speed training, is how long will it take for me to get faster?
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's it. Hey, when is it going to happen? And, you know, the short answer to a complicated question is everyone is different. That's what I tell everyone. Everyone is different. You know, I've been doing this for you know, 30 plus years now. And I've seen athletes improve within that first session that we do something, that first hour or first time I may introduce a certain drill or technique.
Right.
And then I've had athletes where you're just pounding that nail, you know, and it's going a little at a time. And it takes, you know, weeks or months. So
right.
it varies, you know, it varies with these factors in mind. One, where they're at in their development. Okay. What I always say is, you know, where are you trying to get to? I mean, faster is faster, meaning, hey, I'm an 11 flat sprinter and now I want to be an Olympic sprinter. Well, that's not going to take one session.
That's not.
That's going to take years. So it just, you know, I guess it comes down to first, what are your expectations? But one would be looking at where you're at in your development curve and that trajectory. Another thing that I tell athletes is speed training is a process. It's just like any, you know, other thing. And not all of it is, you know, apparent to the eye or to the even watch. And so what I usually say, this is the kind of progression in speed training. First, it has to be an introduction of an evaluation. That's why I was doing eval. Okay. Kind of find out generally, hey, what's going on with this athlete? What are some of the reasons why they may not be running as fast as they can?
Okay. Just
from, you know, how they move their body naturally without any instruction. So I usually start that process. And then, you know, the next part of the process is introducing the new concepts. And you know, so it might be, hey, this is how you need to plant your foot. This is how you need to move your arms. This is how you know, where your posture needs to be. So there's different things. I kind of have a checklist of things that I go through that I'm looking at an athlete. Hey, how does he do? You know, what's his foot strike? What's his posture? What's his rhythm and coordination look like? How does he project the body or she project the body? You know, is it up and down or is it horizontally? So I kind of go through that. And then what I try and do is introduce concepts of how they should be moving their body, how they should be using their body, and try and help them integrate that into their movement patterns. Now, what I do is I don't try and cookie cutter it for everybody. I try and work within the parameters of how they're using their body already. Because most athletes that are coming to me aren't trying to be world-class sprinters. They just need to be faster. So That's going to look different on every athlete that comes in.
Makes sense.
So that's the initial part, is where we just introduce the concepts. Hey, you know, let's try some of these measures and see how the body reacts. The second part of that is Well, now we've got to rehearse those things. Okay. And so now the athlete, once they grasp those concepts and they have the body control to put their foot in the right position, excuse me, and hands in the right position, then we've got to practice that. And that takes repetition. Some athletes have a better command of their body and better muscle memory than others. So again, I've had some athletes that, boom, it clicks and you show them and they hold it. I have other athletes where we're 30 sessions in and I'm saying the same thing. Get on the ball of your foot. Get on the ball of your foot. Get on the ball of your foot. You know?
Yeah.
So it just depends. For you parents out there of young athletes, martial artists, kids in
gymnastics,
dance, all have great body control. So if you want to start your kid out and teach them how to have good body control, those are probably the 3 key sports. Because I've never had an athlete that grew up doing those sports not be able to do almost instantaneously what I've asked them to do with their body. Running, jumping, throwing. It's just there. Some athletes are naturally wired for it. But if your athlete isn't, those are good disciplines to start them in. Okay, so after we're practicing, we're kind of just getting the reps in, and we're trying to get the correct reps and the quality reps. And that, takes a process. They might do it kind of, sort of at the beginning, and it gets more and more refined as they start to master it. So that's a time period. Again, could be a session, it could be 30, 40 sessions. General rule is an athlete should be able to attain a skill within about 30 to 32 sessions.
Okay.
That's my rule of thumb. Okay. If not, then there's either a breakdown in maybe the communication, they're not quite understanding. And I try all different types of modalities to get them to see the picture of what I want. Or they just don't care,
Right. I don't care.
They're just doing it. And there's some athletes that just kind of get in that. After we talk about the repetition, then we want the application. And what I mean by that is now we want to see it in not just the sterile environment of our gym, but out on the field. Are they running like that during practice? Are they running like that during certain drills that they're doing? Are they, slowly applying it to the sport scenario that they need to use it? And again, that takes some time, because now when you got to, hit a ground ball and then run to first base,
right?
And you do that running properly. Well, because we've got some other, components to it. And then after application, and again, you just don't want it, just because an athlete does it once doesn't mean they've got the skill of application. It's got to be repetitive. You got to see it over and over again. There's got to be a refinement to it. And then lastly is doing it in competition. And the reason why I separate that from application is there's a whole nother level of pressure.
Right.
And, a lot of us have seen, definitely track and field, you've got the workout artists where they just look great, in practice. And that gun goes off, bam, they're totally different person, 180 degrees. You're like, what happened? This guy's killing it in workouts. So again, and that kind of dovetails into what you were talking about,
right? With
the relaxation, being able to turn that switch on, relaxation, flow, and recall, and being able to do that under duress. And I think that's the final point. And that's when you call it performance. So,
yeah, long
answer, but there's not a quite concise timeline. I'm sorry. I mean, there's some guys who might be able to say, hey, yeah, I can make you faster in 5 sessions or 10 sessions. But, that can be done. But is it going to transfer on the field when you need it?
Yeah.
So,
Aaron, I think of it as, because I think both our questions kind of intertwine. It's a mentality. It's confidence. I always think about those things when things don't transition from practice to the game setting, I always think about, what is your mental approach? What are you thinking about? And you said it, when that gun goes off and the person changes 180 degrees. I think a lot about these things when players are hitting. What happens when that pitch is thrown and the lights are on and guys are on second and third and your team needs you to put the ball in play? I didn't say get a hit.
Right.
I didn't say home run. I said put the ball in play in the middle of the diamond when the infield's back to tie the game up with one out. There's your stress. It's not 2 outs, it's 1 out where, here we go. Where are you at mentally? Okay. Right. And where's your confidence? I always say that. Where's your confidence?
And actually, again, maybe to parse this a little more, that's kind of just my nature, but you're actually talking about the next level, which is, and I think this is why I look at it, because we work with professional athletes, right, is you get to a certain level as a professional athlete that the next level of being able to do it under competition is the manipulation of the skill. So for track and field athletes, it's not just about, okay, I'm running, I'm executing, but how, when and where can I apply this so I have a mastery over it and can call upon it in competition, So that might mean changing your race phases or strategies, depending on what's going on in the race, right, real time. Just like you said, it's not about, I always, when I talk to baseball players, I always talk about, you go through progression. I just want to make contact, right, when you're real young. Then I just want to put the ball in play. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Then go from that to, okay, now I want to place the ball. Do you see what I'm saying? Now I want to be able to manipulate how I hit the ball based on the scenario.
Right.
So do I hit a chopper? Mm-hmm. Do I hit a line drive? Do I put the ball in the air? Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? So to me, there's layers to this.
Right.
And, I guess the answer to that is that takes years.
It does, Aaron. It takes years. I like to start teaching kids when they're, my kind of like 9.5 is like I start kids. Unless the kid if he's 8 and can handle this stuff, I take him too. And I have a young 8-year-old kid now, 8.5-year-old kid that the skill set's really good. And, the parents asked me, when's he gonna, I said, wait, slow down a little bit. This is gonna take, we're 6 years, this is a 6-year project. This is not like, you hit and that's it, we're done. It's not, there's a whole other side of just the mechanical, you said it right there. You broke it into layers. I love the way you said that. Layers, it's layers on top of layers to get a player to be able to function that way. So I like that. So true.
What's your second one?
My second question is this. My son doesn't hit for power. And that almost like leads into our previous thing I just left off of this layers thing. So kid doesn't hit with power. And I always say, what is power? Are you talking Barry Bonds power? Because Barry Bonds hit 18 home runs and had 59 RBIs his rookie year. And everybody goes, what? You mean he didn't hit 40 home? No, he didn't. Power is acquired skill. And it's when I say acquired skill, it's understanding the strike zone, the pitches you can drive. The pitches you can really drive in a game and you're not taking them. It's like, that's my pitch, I'm going for it. And every time they throw it, I don't miss it, okay? The other thing is barrels. In order to hit the ball with power, you better be able to hit the ball on a line or hit on the barrel consistently. If you're not doing that, there's no way you can get power. If you're not hitting the ball on the barrel, whether it's on the ground or in the air, there's nothing like timing. If you don't have good timing, you're not going to be able to power the baseball. So when people start talking about power, I always look at it this way. If you're a high school player, I'm just going to start there. You're a high school player. You're playing on the fields over 300 feet down the line and 360 and 390 in center. If you're hitting the ball with the fence 15 times, you have what I call power tool during a high school year. That's considered a power tool, consistent power tool, okay? So if you're not doing that consistently, hitting, and I can bring that down a little bit, 12 to 15 home runs, 20 home runs, then you don't have a power tool. you need to have what I call a hit tool. That means you're hitting for a higher average, okay? So unless you're hitting the ball on a regularity of hitting that like that in high school, not a power tool. Get in college, 20 home runs. That's a power tool, okay? And that's how scouts evaluate it. You know, there's three things that scouts look for, Aaron, just in general. What is your awareness when you get in the batter's box? How do you look? Where's your confidence, you know? Second thing, where's your rhythm? Are you out front when you stride? Are you balanced? Are you balanced every time? You look like you're ready to hit, okay? And the third thing, and I mentioned this, barrels. How many times you hit the ball in the barrel, okay? Barrel is the most important thing. It's not always about mechanics. And I think people, a lot of parents that come to me or players that come to me think about, well, I was watching this and mechanically I'm trying to do that. I go, well, what about rhythm and timing? How many times, here I'm feeding this player and he's talking about mechanics and I hit one ball in the barrel, And I'm thinking, what about just trying to hit the ball in the barrel and let's see where we go from there before we even start breaking down your mechanics. And when I start off a player and I do an eval on a player, assessment, and I'm have them hit off the tee and I flip them some balls, I throw them some balls and I use the machine and all that. And I always think, is this player hitting the ball in the barrel? If they're not, then we can say, okay, why aren't they? And then the first question I say is, hey, I want you to worry about your mechanics. Hit the ball in the barrel every time. Get your timing down. Let's work on that first. So that's where my power story's from, Aaron, is that you gotta hit the ball in the barrel and you gotta be free when you do it.
I like that. That last part kind of parallels what I look at with some of the athletes in their running is sometimes it's not about the technique and how pristine it looks. I just want what I call gross forward movement.
Okay, gross forward.
That's what I work at first. It's like, hey, is this kid moving in the direction that we want him to go? That's the first thing. Is like, let's get everything moving towards where we want to go.
Right.
So we clean that up, and it's kind of like, a piece of clay on a potter's wheel. You start to form it and shape it, and as it keeps spinning until you form the bowl or vase or whatever you want.
Right.
So, but my thing is, I just want to get you moving in the right direction, because with running, it could be going up and down. It could be leaning back, pulling your head back. It could be your arms swinging outside to side, well, and I guess what we're talking about first, let's just get efficient. No matter how it looks. I mean, run ugly, but let's get efficient, maybe swing ugly, but let's be efficient by hitting the ball on the barrel, because at least we know if we hit the ball on the barrel, it's more likely that good things are going to happen than bad things.
Right.
And if I'm getting you moving forward, it's more than likely that you're running faster than if you're not.
So true. And I think about, when I think about faster, I think about these two runners that you know of very well. One is Usain Bolt.
Yeah,
Usain
Bolt. Mm-hmm.
And then I think about Michael Johnson.
Yeah.
Right? Two world record holders with entirely different running styles, right?
Yeah.
But you said it. What did you say? Gross forward movement, or what was that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're both moving forward.
And that's like hitting. You gotta get the barrel moving forward. And people don't understand that. The barrel, I see a lot of players move their barrel behind them first and then move forward. By then, you're gonna be late. Is the barrel moving forward quickly to get the ball out in front of the hitting area consistently and hit the ball with good timing? That's how you hit the ball in the barrel. Good timing all the time. Okay. Was your second question tied in with my second question a little bit? What's your second question?
Well, actually, my second question is kind of a nuts and bolts thing. Is how many times a week should I do speed work? Because everyone wants to know, hey, right, how long is it going to take? How many times I got to do it? You know what I'm saying? That sort of thing. So that's probably the second question. How many times should I do speed work?
Okay.
As with anything else, It's pretty individual specific. But what I do is I look at certain factors. It's going to be situational. What are all the other things you have going on in your athletic life? What other, do you have football practice? Do you have basketball practice? Are you playing two sports? All of those things. So how is that athletic pie going to be divided up? And so you first have to look at, how do you want your speed to manifest itself? Are we talking about, home to first? Are we talking about, hey, I'm going to be tested in a 40-yard dash or 60-yard dash? What's the need for speed? Straight line, multi-directional, short burst. Is it something that you want in the game right now? Is it something that, an event coming further along? All of that's going to dictate the priority, and I'm going to say that again, priority that speed training should take in your whole global system of athletic activity. And, what I find is people kind of want to do it as an aside. And the problem with that is it's like anything else. It's a skill. If you do it part-time, you're going to get part-time results, and it's going to take you, part-time. You're going to learn it slower. It's like anything else. We always like to use the word immersion. The more you can immerse yourself in anything, then the faster you're going to learn it. It's going to stick longer, and you're going to be able to use it, and recall it better. So, it's like a language. The best way people learn languages is by immersing themselves in the language and the culture that they're trying to learn. And body movements, I think, are the same thing. It's you're teaching your body a new language, whether it's how to throw a ball, how to swing a bat, and there's refinement to all that. So given with all of that said, you got to decide, okay, if I'm going to train for an event, if I'm going to train, just regular kind of keeping my development moving, well, you got to look at what modalities do I need to use? In other words, do I do weight training? Do I do other forms of resistance training? Do I do, all speed training, plyometrics? And then you've got to look at what that does to your body. Okay. And how it's going to affect your other activities. Because if you're off season and you don't have any other activities, then it's pretty simple. You can speed train, 4 or 5 days a week, 3 to 5 days a week, depending on your level, your age, and your body's capacity, and what the volume and intensity of the workouts are, which are all other things that kind of go into this. But you have to look at and say, okay, if I do this plyometric work Monday, how's it going to affect my basketball practice Tuesday? And then if I do this speed training, this running, these sprints on Wednesday, how does it affect my basketball practice on Thursday? And sometimes you have to make some hard decisions and say, well, you know what? Speed is a priority. It's one of the things that's kind of holding my development back, my ascension as a basketball player. So maybe I have to just be sore those days and work through my basketball practices.
Wow.
Because you can't always be fresh for everything. And maybe it's during a time of year where those basketball practices or that season isn't as important. So those are the sorts of choices that you have to start to look at, is how do I fit it in the global aspect of everything I'm doing? Right. What's its effect on the other things that I'm doing? And can I live with those effects? And so, that's kind of what you have to first think about. And so sometimes out of the year, you might be going twice a week. Okay. Other times you might be going 1 day a week. Other times it might be, again, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, wherever the case may be, however the program is set up, so that you can benefit from the training. Because it's not like, it's not where you just kind of just do the work, because
Right.
there has to be a balance of doing the work and recovery for you to get the benefit of speed training. And just because you don't speed train on the next day doesn't mean your body, that's a recovery day. Because you can speed train on Monday and then you can go have basketball practice and you're running up and down that court for 2 hours and then you're doing lines at the end.
Right.
Well, that's not recovery. Just because you haven't speed trained doesn't mean it's recovery from speed training.
Right.
So it's a complicated sort of thing. But I do give, some general parameters
Okay.
based on age. And again, you got to also take those other things into place. If your age is 8 to 10, and you're non-track and field athletes, because track and field is a different monster,
Yes.
is you're probably gonna speed train. You can probably speed train anywhere from 1 day, 2 days a week,
Okay.
which would be fine. Okay. Because you're not necessarily talking about the physical development. You're at that age, you're really talking about the repetition of acquiring the skills of how to move faster. Okay. Ages 11 to 12, you might be anywhere from 1 to 3 days max. Again, depending on where that athlete is in their level of development. From ages 13 to 15, you should be probably speed training any minimum of 2 days a week, probably 3. Okay. And then for athletes, 15, 18 or older, that are pretty well developed, you're probably talking, you should be doing some form of speed training 3 days a week, minimum. And again, these are for all non-track and field athletes. And again, speed training isn't necessarily going out and running wind sprints. Okay.
I was going to say that.
Because that's people think, oh, how am I going to be able to do, 3 days a week of sprints? No, again, it depends on the modalities that you choose. Is it plyometric work? Is it strength training? Is it, a combo work where you're doing strength training and plyos? Is it running work? Is it resistance work? Is it overspeed work? So there's all different ways that you get an athlete faster. Is it just drills and technique?
Yeah.
But I think, it's like anything else, speed is a skill, has to be developed, has to be honed. And if you don't use it, you lose it. And it's something that you got to keep close to you. I always say you got to keep it close. If you're a basketball player, you're not going to go weeks on end without working on your shot.
Right.
You're a baseball player, you're not going to go weeks on end without swinging the bat. And it doesn't mean dry. It doesn't mean live, but
Right.
it just might mean shadowing through, your technique. Speed is the same way. So, that's just some rough talk on how many days that you might want to do your speed training. General guidelines, but really things to consider is probably more important. Those things to consider when you're kind of putting that all together.
What great insight you just gave there, and how you broke it down by age, just in general for a non-track and field athlete, but outstanding insight about different elements of speed training too. It's not just running sprints. I love the way you explained about 4 to 6 different types of speed training you can do, which people don't understand, by the way. And I always say this, Aaron, that we do very well is managing our athletes,
Right.
whether they're in our shop or they're on the field or they're at the track with us, managing what we do with our athletes and trying to get them to the next level. That's pretty cool.
I mean, it's like anything else. There's nuances and intricacies to everything,
Right.
And everything looks easy from the outside looking in, and I guess with so much information out there, it's easy to compile that information, but compiling information isn't knowledge.
Right.
And, the professionals have the knowledge. And it's not just in our industry, it's in any industry. I mean, for parents there, they might look at their job. Well, there's levels to the knowledge that you have at your job, whether it's just being a software engineer, or, you know, some salespeople are going to be better than others because of their knowledge, and they know how to apply the things that they've learned. So, you know, it may all look like sales from the outside,
right?
But there's other nuances and intricacies to close a sale, and, you know, prospect a sale, and all the rest of those things that, you know, it's more than just getting on the phone and cold calling somebody.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
My third question, Aaron, that I get asked a lot is, how many times a week should a player hit? It's kind of backed off what we just said, and it's different for everybody, you know. And when you have a young player that's like 8 to 10, I always tell parents, hey, minimum, you know, 2 to 3 times a week, and it doesn't need to be a long session of like, you know, go hit for an hour. It could be like, hey, go work on your footwork that we talked about in our hitting lesson, or your footwork to understand balance control and your posture. And so that's not going out hitting 1,000 balls, you know. And one day it may be, hey, I want you to go take, you know, 50 swings off the tee, you know, but I want you to take them, you know, the best of your ability, and try to, you know, work on some of these mechanical things we talked about, like your footwork. But if you can't do 50, then I want you to do 25, and I want you to do 25 the best you can. So people get enamored with numbers, like, okay, he hit 200 balls. Oh, well, you went 300 balls, and, you know, he got a lot of work in, and then he didn't hit again until the following Tuesday. Well, diminishing returns for me. You know, how good were those 300 swings? That's a lot of swings. By the way, 300 swings is a lot of swings for any player. So this better be a really trained athlete, you know. Oh, the kid was 9. Well, back off here a little bit.
What does swing 299 look like?
Exactly, with the 9-year-old, right? So, you know, always think about age. You know, kids that are, you know, 10 through 12, always say, you know, you get your work in 3 days a week, you know, and that could be, you know, soft toss, tee work, flips, underhand flips, and some live. I think all players need to hit live once a week. I do. The ball needs to be moving towards them somehow. And if you're not a good batting practice thrower, then do flips. But the ball needs to be moving, because the ball is moving forward to you. And I think that's where a lot of players get disturbed for timing, Aaron, is that they're not doing enough of that. Yeah, they don't see enough of the ball moving at them to where they can make a decision when to start their swing. My impression on all hitters and all ages, they don't know when to start their swing consistently. That disturbs their timing. If a kid's not hitting the ball in the barrel, then their start time or their rhythm to get in position to hit the ball in the barrel is off. Okay, so I think that's important. As the kids get older, past 13 through 18, that's all going to be depending on the athlete. You know, how bad do they want it? How often should they hit? That's up to them, and the type of work they're trying to do, and what are they actually working on. That's another thing. Are you just swinging, or are you swinging with purpose? I always say that. Are we swinging with purpose? What are we trying to do in the game? Or we go from practice to the game. How do we get that great practice swing into a great game swing? That's why I still teach. Is that, to me, is the thrill of teaching, trying to get a player to take what they do in practice and move it to the game and make it efficient, make it dominating in the game, and feel good about it, you know? And it's not always about, I got to hit. No, it's about, hey, man, I felt good. My balance was good. I was getting off good swings. I wasn't missing my pitch. This pitcher is one of the best pitchers. He's challenging. I was on his ball. Those are victories to me. That's a process of hitting. It's not about, oh, he hit 500 and he hit this many. No, what are you doing from an at-bat to an at-bat approach? And that is all predicated on how you practice and how many times you hit a week and what are your goals. So each player is different, and I think that's the important thing about that, Aaron, is if they can understand that. And we said this earlier in the podcast, is that this is not a year project or a 3-month project. This is it takes years and years to become a great hitter, and your ability to not only understand it mentally, but to get your body physically conditioned to do it, and then apply all that together and make yourself into a better game hitter. That's what this is all about.
I like that. Now you said a couple of things that I really liked. And I just went out of my head. But one thing, so I'll bounce around here a little bit.
Okay.
One thing was, I liked how you talked about your hitting practice sometimes is not swinging the bat, but just working on your feet.
Mm-hmm.
And
I love that.
Yeah. And, I can remember, way back when I was trying to play baseball, that was one of the first things I did. Was I didn't have anyone to practice with, so I either had to go to batting cages,
Mm-hmm.
or hit off a tee. And actually I had a client who was teaching me, and I got better hitting off the tee. And part of the process was, first he just said, hey, let's just work on moving your feet, getting that timing, getting that rhythm, getting that balance, so that you are in the right position and ready to swing. And so I really see the value in that. And I think a lot of people think, okay, well, I'll just go, I swung the bat,
Right.
100 times, but it's like, well, what led up to that? The other thing, I think the overall point from what your answer was is you're talking about the quality of the training, and like you said, swinging with purpose, so it's not about the reps. It's not about it, and I think people get into this checklist mentality, okay, I did, 500 swings, great. But again, what percentage of those were good swings? What percentage of those, if you're talking about making that progression from contact to manipulation, how many of those did you hit opposite field? How many of those did you let your hands get, in a certain position? All of those sorts of manipulation things, I think, can be done on a tee if you're working at home.
Right.
And so what's the breakdown of that 500 swings? I think those are things that need to be considered when you're talking about, using tee, batting practice,
Right.
and setting that whole thing up. And I guess it comes back to what we always talk about is approach. What's your approach?
Right. Yeah. Hey, Aaron, what's your third question?
Yeah, I had one, and then it spun off into another one, and now it went right out of my head. So give me just 1 second. I think it was, it's kind of like, how do I know when I get faster?
Oh,
That's a big one.
yeah.
Because everyone always kind of wants to use the clock to determine how they get faster.
Right.
Well, my answer to that is, I don't always ask athletes. They say, oh, they want to get faster. And I always say, well, how do you want your speed to manifest itself in your sport? Because that's completely different
Yes.
than I want to get faster in my 40-yard dash, because that isn't necessarily measurable. That's observational. And that's experiential, So that's a little bit different. And so what I say is, okay, what's your speed going to look like? I may have a basketball player. Is that being able to keep up with everyone running up and down full court? Is that short burst quickness? Is that getting around a defender? Is that shutting down a defender? Is it 2 steps, 3 steps, 8 steps? How is that going to look, on the court? And so that's what you have to define first, because you can get faster. And I tell athletes this all the time. You can get faster, but what you want is useful speed.
Yeah.
And, especially with the bigger kids, everyone always measures themselves by the foot race that the team has running up and down the field. It's like,
Right.
it's like, no, you got to just be fast for your position. And, one of the things I tell the baseball players, well, if you're a third baseman or a catcher or a first baseman, you're usually the less mobile guys. So you're not going to be up in front of the pack. But if you can reduce your home to first by 2 steps, that's faster. You may still be the slowest on the team, but what's that going to do for your batting average? That's the useful speed that we're talking about. Basketball, again, you may running up and down the court you may not be the fastest kid, but are you getting past your defenders? Are you getting open if you're wide receiver? All of those sorts of things. So, again, Jerry Rice is probably the best example in football. He wasn't a blazer, but he knew how to use his speed to create separation and get open. I even had a couple of NFL prospects that signed this year.
Right.
One of them we worked on linear breakdown speed. The other, this was a guy who was running slants in cross field. All we had to do is work on not deceleration, but separation. Mm-hmm. How do you get separation from that defender? Right. So it depends on, again, how you want that speed to look and how you want it to manifest itself. And you can get faster in a 40-yard dash or 60-yard dash, but it still may not show on the field. And the reason you're coming to a performance trainer is, in the end, to me, is perform. Now, if you want a better 40-yard dash, fine. We'll work on a 40-yard dash and we'll measure it by those standards. But if you're talking about, I need to get faster and I want to steal bases and I want to turn singles into doubles, that you may not necessarily see on a stopwatch.
Right. And I think that's important because people don't understand what happens when you talk about separation. I think about Jerry Rice too, and what you said about Jerry, and what he did very well is that he did separate from guys. No one ever caught him, Aaron, from behind. I always look at that, and they just never could figure out how to catch this guy. And I also think about guys that could steal bases like Rickey Henderson. Rickey Henderson was he was fast, but he wasn't like world class guy. But you know what? He could get the top speed better than anybody in the history of baseball stealing bases. He got the top speed and he knew how to do it, and he could just call on this all the time. When I saw Rickey steal, Aaron, man, it was just like he was accelerating every time he slid. Now, I mean, most guys are slowing down when they're sliding, right? He's accelerating, so he knew how to do that. So, and look at your shirt; it says game speed.
Exactly,
game speed.
So, that's kind of how I look at it. And again, I think we all want to measure, because we want to justify our work or the money we're spending and the time we're investing in something. I get it. But not all feedback is going to happen like that. So that's why I'm always quizzing the athletes, and I'm quizzing the parents when I see them. Hey, what's happening in practice? What's happening in games? And they might be saying, hey, yeah, I'm beating balls out now.
Right.
Or, you know what? I actually am turning 2 more now. So those are things that I look for as feedback as, hey, we're on the right path. I'm asking a parent, what does he look like? Is he flailing his arms still? Is his head back looking at the sky? All of those are indicators that, okay, this kid is progressing at getting faster. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, unfortunately, you just can't quantify that.
Right. Well, Aaron, this is great, man. We had a chance to talk about the 3 questions we get asked in our respective fields. So this is a great podcast, great day for us to kind of talk a little bit to the people out there that want to know about these questions and what we do in hitting and what we do in speed training development. So, hey, out there, thanks for listening today to our podcast. And this is Coach Eric Johnson, known as The Brand.
Coach Aaron Thigpen, the source. We'll see you.